All right, gang, part two of the Business 101 lecture. For the other parts, check out Weir's Media Group. You can, follow my profile or whatever. So, in part one, what I talked about briefly was scaling. I also talked about how different business institutions and different business instructors cannot teach you or will not teach you without putting your hand out for some serious cash, like a business consultant. And I'm a business consultant, so I know these things. They're not going to teach you how to effectively run a small business, but with the innovations of the internet and me trying to expand my channel and the channel for my media company, I'm going to give you guys all of the goods. Now, so for part two, let's get into talking about whether or not you are cut out for business, because that is the first thing we need to figure out before you start deciding whether or not you want to start a business. We need to find out whether or not you have that mentality to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, you can't really learn how to be a good business person. Okay. You have to be born a good business person. Now, I am, of course, trying to teach people of all kinds the ins and outs of business. But if you are not born a good business person, you will not be a good business person unless you go through some serious life transformations and you start thinking differently. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out for you what people that are born with these skills actually function like and how they think. And maybe this is something that appeals to you. I will say, if you cannot grasp the concepts that I talk about, then stop thinking about starting your own business. You will just fail miserably. Okay. And I don't want to see anybody failing miserably. I'm in South America currently, and I'm surrounded by people that are out there on the streets dumpster diving for food who failed miserably. That can happen to any business owner and any employee at any time, but for the most part, that happens to business owners that go totally bankrupt. And the business owners that go totally bankrupt are people that get into businesses that are just not cut out for it. They're not born that way. Okay. I explained previously that I've had my own businesses for 40 years, and I will explain where that whole thing started from. As a kid, I lived a normal life with my family in Miami up until about the age of 8 years old. When I turned eight, I was now old enough to mow the lawn for my father. We had a big lawn. There was weeds. There was everything. It was a big lawn. We were sitting on like 3 acres, 2 acres. So it was a lot. And there was palm trees everywhere. And, you can imagine like a tropical setting. I mean, this was like real work. Okay. So at 8 years old, my father and my older brother teach me how to mow the lawn. And if I mow the lawn once a week, then I make like $5. So this was my first like real run at business, $5. Okay, so for 4 hours of work or 5 hours of work out in the Florida sun with mosquitoes and that itchy grass blowing on me with the sweat and all that stuff, I was making about $1 an hour. Now, I was obsessed with G.I. Joe action figures at the time. And my father would spend an entire day out on the town. He was an attorney, but this is back in the 80s. So he'd spend an entire day out on the town and going to the courthouse and going to the Home Depot and all this stuff. And sometimes he would take me along with him. And if I went along with my father, I couldn't go into these places. Okay. And back then, back in the early 80s, it was very common to just go ahead and leave your kids in the car, right? This was a common thing. So this was something that happened all day long. I would be stuck in a hot ass car in the Florida sun my entire, like, I would say for 2 years, probably 3 years leading up until, I would say, I remember from like 4 or 5 years old up until I was about 8 years old. And even after that, this was just a common thing. And at the time, G.I. Joe action figures were really popular and they were $3 a piece. And all I would have in the car to do was to play with 2 or 3 action figures and make these stories up in my mind in order to kill the time, right? Because I'm sweating to death. I'm basically dying in this car, like on the weekends, every weekend, like my whole childhood. So by the time I got the opportunity to mow lawns for money, I put two and two together and I realized, okay, if I save this money every month, I'll have like $20. And then I can go to the store and I can buy like 6 action figures. So, and this became something that was like really making sense to me. So, working at the time for money at such a young age and seeing such a great payoff of having more action figures was just absolutely awesome. Before long, my parents bought an avocado farm, and I worked as a farm hand on this avocado farm, picking avocados every summer, every weekend for years of my childhood as well, up until I was about like, I would say from 8 years old to about like 11 ish. For 3 years solid, I was a farmer. Okay. And my parents would pay me $1 per bag of avocados that I would pick. And a bag would have like, I don't know, probably 50 avocados in it because they were small and we're talking big like paper bags. They were double stacked paper bags that were real commonplace at grocery stores. And you would fill these bags, right? And you would put the bag by the tree because the trees were massive. And the way that you got the avocados was there was a long pole that had like a net on it, and the net had a knife in the net. And you would put the net around the avocado up in the tree, and you would yank on the stem, and it would break off the avocado that would fall into this bag, and you would guide it down to the ground, take the avocado out, put it in the bag. So you do like 50 of those, and you would have a bag. So for every bag that I did, I would get $1. So, I'm out there just crushing it, just crushing it, making, now I'm making really good money. I'm making like $100 a week. Then I started to realize with the avocados that when we would bring the avocados to the packing house, if the avocados were too big, or if it was the wrong season or something, we would end up with all of these extra avocados. And my business mind from a child, just looking at this, would realize, hey, we've got 100 or 50 avocados that didn't make the cut, that the packing house didn't want to buy, because we would bring a big pickup truck with a big basket on it, and the basket would dump it onto a conveyor belt. And the conveyor belt, almost like a luggage belt at an airport, would just bring these avocados down the line, and this machine would sort them, right? And the ones that were not good, it would kick off to the side. So eventually, I just collected all of these avocados, and when we would go back to our neighborhood, which was far away from the farm, I would have like 80, 50, 40, 30, whatever avocados. So I decided at that age that I would take these avocados to the neighborhood and knock on doors and talk to the friends and the parents of my friends, and I would sell these avocados. So I would sell the avocados for $0.25 a piece. So I was making money on the work that I was doing by bagging, and I was making more money by actually selling the avocados after hours.